Just a heads up before we get started, this is a fast-moving story, and we're taping on Thursday afternoon. All right, here's the show. I'll start with an easy question. Tell me who you are and what you do.
I'm Nitish Pahwa. I'm an associate business and tech writer here at Slate.com. And today I am here at the Southern District of New York covering the Sam Bankman-Fried trial.
Like so many others, Nitish is there covering the trial of Sam Bankman-Fried, one of the biggest cases of financial fraud ever committed. The trial kicked off this week in downtown Manhattan, right where that other big civil trial was happening. According to Nitish, it was a circus.
There's already tons of cameras set up. There's a ton of police barricades and cops standing around. With a civil trial of Trump going on, like extra precautions all around. We've got like one guy already coming out here with a sign with some pretty anti-Semitic slogans regarding SBF. So it's a little weird, but it's very bustling over here. People are definitely aware that there's some big stuff going on.
SBF had been on a very public PR campaign / self-justification tour until a few months ago, when he was sent to jail by a judge frustrated with his pretrial shenanigans. This week marked the first time anyone's seen him in public for months. And he had a different look. No schlubby shorts, no wrinkled t-shirt, and his hair?
The rumors are true. He got his haircut, apparently, from a fellow inmate. He's definitely skinnier. He's definitely lost weight. I've never seen him be so still. Like, you know, he's always known as being very famously fidgety in interviews, whether with his leg or like futzing around with something with his hands. None of that here. Whenever he converses with his lawyers, he does, I swear, they're probably the most narrow nods I've ever seen. Like his face barely moves, but you can tell that he is like moving like up and down somewhat. Mm-hmm. And yeah, for like the entirety of the trial, he's been just like sitting at the desk with his lawyers on a laptop. He usually has like a small word processor up on there. I assume he's typing like notes and recollections and such.
To be more serious, this is technically, this is the trial of Sam Bankman-Fried, but is it fair to say that it maybe feels like the crypto industry is on trial here?
Absolutely. And you could get no better indicator of that than from Sam's lawyer himself, Mark Cohen. In his opening statement, he talked about how this really was like an overlook and view of the crypto industry from 2017 through 2022, which recounts the timeline when SBF started his Alameda research company, and then both that and FTX went bankrupt. They said that to try to make the point that, like, look, Sam is just like doing what like a smart businessman would do in a very complex space. But I think for a lot of other people, including some very, crypto curious or like crypto positive people I've met here and about or in other online spaces, they view it as, no, this is going to be very determinative for our industry. If this guy, who was the face of crypto basically for a couple years, who hobnobbed with all these big shot politicians and celebrities, who was trying to work with lawmakers on regulations, if this happens to him, then that whole idealistic vision of crypto is pretty much all but dead.
So today on the show, the trial of Sam Bankman-Fried is finally here. The government says his company, FTX, was a house of cards built on lies. Sam Bankman-Fried says it was just business as usual in crypto. I'm Emily Peck, filling in for Lizzie O'Leary, and you're listening to What Next TBD, a show about tech, power, and how the future will be determined. Stick around.
Reboot your credit card with Apple Card. It gives you unlimited daily cash back that can earn 4.15% annual percentage yield when you open a savings account. A high-yield, low-effort way to grow your money with no fees. Apply for Apple Card now in the Wallet app on iPhone to start earning and growing your daily cash with savings today. Apple Card subject to credit approval. Savings is available to Apple Card owners subject to eligibility. Savings accounts by Goldman Sachs Bank USA, member FDIC, terms apply.
This podcast is brought to you by Progressive Insurance. Most of you listening right now are probably multitasking. Yep, while you're listening, you're probably also driving, cleaning, exercising, or maybe even grocery shopping. But if you're not some kind of moving vehicle, there's something else you can be doing right now. Getting an auto quote from Progressive Insurance. It's easy, and you could save money by doing it right from your phone. Drivers who save by switching to Progressive save nearly $750 on average, and auto customers qualify for an average of 7 discounts. Discounts for having multiple vehicles on your policy, being a homeowner, and more. So, just like your favorite podcast, Progressive will be with you 24/7, 365 days a year, so you're protected no matter what. Multitask right now. Quote your car insurance at Progressive.com to join over 28 million drivers who trust Progressive. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. National average 12-month savings of $744 by new customers surveyed who saved with Progressive between June 2022 and May 2023. Potential savings will vary. Discounts not available in all states and situations.
Before we jump some more into the trial, let's give listeners a little refresher. We know that FTX collapsed and filed for bankruptcy. Can you kind of catch everyone up on how that happened and how that played out?
The long and short of it is early November 2022, there were a couple revelations about Sam Bankman-Fried and his businesses that got a lot of international attention. One was a leaked balance sheet from his Alameda Research hedge fund that was leaked to the publication CoinDesk. This showed that Alameda's business, despite Sam's reputation as this genius wealth generator, was actually not as sound or as sturdy as he'd claimed to be. There was that. And there was obviously some worry among people who'd invested in Sam's businesses or been customers on his exchanges. And Sam, around that time, was, looking for a little bit of assistance or endorsement from people in the industry to basically, help shore him up again. And it seemed for a while that Binance, which is still the world's largest crypto exchange, that its CEO, Changpeng Zhao, was going to come in and help them out. But then he tweeted that he actually is not going to go through with this deal and that he has very little confidence in Sam's businesses and is, they're liquidating all their positions. So I think that double whammy just led to a whole bunch of people who'd originally banked with FTX or otherwise involved with it, just kind of taking out all their money in a wide panic. And it turned out that the businesses did not have the customer deposits on hand that they had. So they had to pause withdrawals and eventually file for bankruptcy, which then led Sam to cede total control of his businesses. And eventually, as we now know, led to his investigation and arrest.
It kind of starts out like a classic bank run. Customers rush to FTX to pull their money, and then there's not enough money. But it's my understanding that when investigators started looking into it, they alleged that Bankman-Fried basically took the money that was at FTX that customers thought would be there when they needed it because it was an exchange, and used it to make investments using another company, a hedge fund, Alameda, right? So he's basically taking money from FTX and giving it to Alameda, and then maybe lost it there. There was $8 billion missing?
Yep, $8 billion that was just misplaced. It's fine. But yeah. Sam started Alameda in 2017. He started FTX a couple years later after that, and they were supposed to be completely separate businesses, right? Even though he was at the time CEO of both and majority owner of both. And in 2021, he ceded the CEO position of Alameda to his ex-girlfriend, Caroline Ellison, and another colleague, Stan Trabucco. And they were supposed to be, like, again, kind of making sure that things were not mingled in between. They were doing their own separate things. Alameda Research was this hedge fund with bank accounts. FTX was this wider exchange with an international reach. But as it turns out, there was a lot of FTX money, which mainly was coming from the actual deposits that customers were pouring in. A lot of that was being funneled through Alameda, and a lot of that was being spent from there for a lot of Sam and his friends' own basically personal benefits. You have stories from FTX executives of they bought this yacht, they bought this big mansion, they bought all these other goodies for themselves that they definitely would not have had the means for if they'd not been siphoning all these like millions, billions of dollars. And traditionally in an exchange like this, the revenue is supposed to come from the transaction fees or things like that. You're not supposed to be just like wholesale taking a customer account and putting it elsewhere and then losing it elsewhere so that the customer can't get it back. But it seems to be that's basically what happened. And what's more is one of the ways that FTX gained so many customers was that they promised very high yields to people who put in money with them. So when they came to withdraw because they were concerned about what was going on, they were also promised these big percent yields that obviously FTX could not meet because it didn't have the money. It was not there. It was not even in Alameda, really. And without the money, what can you do? You get bankruptcy protection.
In this case, SBF is facing 7 charges, 2 counts of wire fraud, 4 counts of conspiracy to commit fraud, and 1 count of conspiracy to commit money laundering. And it seems like the prosecution has a robust case. Most of SBF's top lieutenants, people like Carolyn Ellison, Gary Wong, and Nishad Singh, are expected to testify against him in court. Meanwhile, SBF's defense team is arguing that this is just how things work in the crypto world.
What I could gather from the opening statements and the cross-examination so far is what it seems like is basically the defense is going with, look, Sam was this busy, brilliant guy. And, even if there were stuff going between Alameda and FTX, it's fine because Alameda was helping FTX get off the ground. And that's just the way, it should have just continued doing that. And they kept saying in the opening statements, nothing wrong with that. And like this very soft-spoken voice and alleging that the government in its opening case laying out these charges was like presenting things out of context or misrepresenting various bits of things or from what it sounds like in this cross-examination I just saw of one of our first witnesses, Adam Udidia, a former FTX employee who was there pretty much until the week it all came crashing, they were very much trying to, I think, represent him as someone who'd been coached by the government to like tell the truth as they saw it. And it doesn't seem like the judge is very happy with that sort of line of questioning. I'm not sure how the jury will feel about it.
So SBF is kind of trying to say this was all just part of doing business. Isn't he also trying to lay some blame on his deputies and lieutenants as well, and maybe even his law firm?
As I alluded to before, in regard to, Caroline Ellison, Sam Trabucco, this whole thing was, okay, like I've ceded control of this, so they are supposed to be the ones in charge. They're supposed to be the ones handling it. And if they did not have it together, it's their fault, right? They messed it up. And meanwhile, I was trying so hard to be FTX's public face and the guy who was really growing the business. I was out here like, talking to politicians, getting on the marketing, talking to the media, And I don't know, like, it's a very interesting line of argument, not least because part of SBF's very public brand pre-collapse was that he was this wonderkind genius who could just do everything and be everywhere all at once and
Mm-hmm.
make a ton of money in the process. So I'm not sure how they're going to try to square that with this take now that, oh, actually, he did not know things that were going on and it's other people who were messing it up, even though Sam trusted them. And I mean, that was basically what Sam was trying to say in his little media tour in between FTX's bankruptcy and his charges in mid-December of 2022.
One of those. I was frankly surprised by how big Alameda's position was, which points to another failure of oversight on my part, and failure to appoint someone to be chiefly in charge of that. But I wasn't trying to commingle funds.
But yeah, I mean, that definitely did not seem to fly in the court of public opinion. And I guess we'll see if it actually flies in a court of law.
Is there anything else that stands out to you from just the first 2.5 days?
The judge here is very interesting. It's Judge Lewis Kaplan, who's been on the bench for a few decades now. He seems very much like he wants this thing to move really fast and get it done with and make sure that people's time is not being wasted. So, for example, during this cross-examination I was just referring to, the defense would ask questions like, oh yeah, well, because Sam did this because he was trying so hard to, grow the business, right? Or Sam told you this because he was so concerned about yada, 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 trying to like attribute these details to Sam, and the prosecution generally has been objecting to it. There have been a lot of objections. The judge has been very unamused. Clearly, you can see it in his face.
Mm-hmm.
And actually, just now, when the jury left the room and taking a break, but before we all left the courtroom, the judge told the defense that he was pretty concerned about the way they were lining up their questions and that they needed to kind of curb how long they were taking. And apparently they have another hour more of questions after this, after I go back into the courtroom. But I suspect that Kaplan will want to move it along.
So he's not seeming very sympathetic, to say the least, to Sam Bankman-Fried's team.
It's not like he's universally saying like, oh yeah, every objection against them flies. He's allowed others. And I mean, I think he's been generally pretty cooperative with the defense when it comes to jurors and other factors in the trial, exhibits, the opening statement, which included a whole PowerPoint slideshow. But for the most part, yeah, he's definitely not very impressed with how they seem to be conducting their defense and what they're trying to like put in, I guess, the jury's minds about Sam Bankman-Fried in the process. And it's interesting too, because he's telling the jurors, look, you're trying to objectively litigate this case just based on the evidence that's laid out here. And you need to, not do your own research, not consume all this media, or not, confer with anybody else about any of this. But this is also, as evidenced by our conversation right now, one of the most highly covered and anticipated trials in the country. So I think he's definitely got a lot of concerns about how that can affect jury opinion and affect the way that this case is perceived.
When we come back, what to expect next from the biggest names in this case?
Reboot your credit card with Apple Card. It gives you unlimited daily cash back that can earn 4.15% annual percentage yield when you open a savings account. A high-yield, low-effort way to grow your money with no fees. Apply for Apple Card now in the Wallet app on iPhone to start earning and growing your daily cash with savings today. Apple Card subject to credit approval. Savings is available to Apple Card owners subject to eligibility. Savings accounts by Goldman Sachs Bank USA, member FDIC, terms apply.
It's time to get your checking account to zero with free checking from PenFed. That's zero ATM fees, zero balance requirements, and zero time spent waiting for your paycheck to direct deposit because you can receive it up to 2 days early. Open your account with just $25 and see how big zero can be. Apply online today at PenFed.org/free checking. Early direct deposit eligibility may vary between pay periods and timing of payers' funding. To receive any advertised product, you must become a member of PenFed, insured by NCUA.
On day 2, the prosecution called to the stand someone who has actually lost money with FTX. Did you find that compelling? Do you think the jury did?
It was an interesting move to start with. Yeah, because a lot of us reporters, obviously, we're anticipating the people in the inner circle. But yeah, the first person they brought out was someone who lost money in FTX and in FTX International. This is man born in France, based in London, works in commodities in his time. And I think he outlined a pretty persuasive case that, look, SBF had this very media savvy, very heavily online reputation. I saw him all over Twitter. I saw him in these ads. I saw all these celebrities and politicians who were praising him and dapping him up. I saw all this marketing that said that FTX was a safe place to put my money. So, of course, I trusted it. And I think the part of his testimony that really stood out to me was, he was going into that week in November when everything fell apart. There first started to be warning signs of trouble with the CoinDesk article and the Alameda balance sheet. And meanwhile, throughout that, SBF was tweeting look, there are all these rumors coming out, but our assets are fine. FTX is fine, so don't worry about it. And this witness said, no, I looked at that message and I did not worry about it. And so I didn't attempt to withdraw any of my money, even though it seemed like he had enough of both Bitcoins and fiat in FTX to equate to about $100,000. And so just 1 or 2 days afterward, when it increasingly became clear that FTX was maybe in a lot more trouble than SBF was letting on, he said, well, then I realized that maybe I shouldn't be trusting these Twitter threads that are trying to reassure me. And I wanted to get my money out. And I never got it. And I still have never gotten it back to this day. And yeah, that really struck me, just as in terms of this is a man, SBF, who engendered so much trust that even in a point of crisis, he was still able to persuade at least this customer, and I'm sure many others, that, look, it'll be all right. Just stick with me. And then they did. And now, obviously, they're furious.
Who are the upcoming witnesses that you're looking out for? I know Sam Bankman-Fried's parents are at the courthouse because they're all over Getty Images, just images of his parents. Carolyn Ellison, who we've mentioned a few times, is she expected to testify? Who are we excited about?
Sometime this week, we're going to hear from Gary Wong, who was another longtime friend of SBF's, going back to high school days, and was an executive at FTX and took a plea deal with prosecutors over his role in all of this. It'll definitely be interesting to hear from him up front about what's going on, especially since his name has already been invoked as, someone who was in the know as to certain FTX troubles, but, may not have acted in as quick a way as was necessary. Caroline Ellison will definitely come up at some point. It's inevitable. I think a lot of people are really looking forward to that one. But I would suspect that they're going to wait for that for a little bit more, because I think they're also going to the prosecution, is going to really emphasize the personal aspect of it, since that's been bared to so many of us. And I suspect we will also hear from a few other FTX executives at various points, like Nishad Singh, who, like Gary Wong, another longtime friend of SBF's inner circle member, lived in that infamous Bahamas penthouse with SBF, Caroline, Gary Wong, and others.
He went to math camp with Sam Bankman-Fried. Is that right?
They met at some math camp back when SBF was in high school. I mean, these are all like very like academically talented people. This guy who's been talking this week, Adam Yabibia, he met SBF while they were both studying at MIT. They lived together in the same house. Gary Wong was also there and around, and they stayed in touch enough that Sam was willing to offer him jobs at his companies after they'd graduated.
And all these people with all these personal connections to Sam, they all cooperated with prosecutors. And essentially, I mean, they flipped. They turned on Sam Bankman-Fried, their longtime friend. In Carolyn Ellison's case, an ex-girlfriend. And they're all basically on the other side now, right?
Yeah, it's interesting. I think there have been like varying treatments for various people here involved. Like, I know that Ryan Salem, another rather notorious FTX executive, has not like agreed to cooperate with prosecutors for this case, especially because he's going to be, I think, dealing with the other charges SBF will be facing and will be tried on in March over the more campaign finance oriented aspects of his financial misdeeds. Investigators were very proactive about going after, all these other inner circle members and FTX higher ups. And from what Adam Yabibia said on the stand, he was able to get an immunity deal for his testimony. And it doesn't seem like he took like a special plea deal or anything, because as he tells the story on the stand, he quit right when he learned that it's interesting. The story he's telling is that he knew Alameda was getting FTX money even like after 2021, but he wasn't worried about it because he thought that Alameda was just holding the money. But then during that crisis week in November 2022, when he learned that actually Alameda did not have that money because it had been spending it elsewhere, that was the moment he resigned and fled the Bahamas.
Is there any chance any of the celebrities will show up at trial? Tom Brady, Larry David, anything like that on deck?
Well, I don't know about them themselves or whether, even their names will be evoked all that often, but we have already gotten a taste of them because the prosecution has, in laying out their case about, SBF's connections and the way he convinced so many people, is they played the full ads that Tom Brady and Larry David had both recorded for FTX.
A trade? Are you sure?
Not a trade. I'm trading crypto. FTX is the safest and easiest way to buy and sell crypto. It's the best way to get in the game.
And, how much money they were paid for both. And it was really, really a wild trip down memory lane.
In Larry David's defense, he expressed skepticism about crypto in the ad itself. I'll just say that. I'm not.
Yeah, definitely. His whole messaging there was a little more ambiguous. And I think in a style a bit more suited to Larry David, whereas like Tom Brady, and we haven't seen Steph Curry's ad yet, but I'm sure his name will be brought up too. They were very confidently bolstering this app.
So Tish, one thing that struck me while you were talking is this case really isn't about crypto per se. It's a very traditional fraud case. I mean, it's not unlike Madoff. Took people's money, people trusted him, but he literally just took their money instead of investing it. And sort of at the core of this case, it's the same thing going on. So I wonder if you had to explain how this case specifically is about crypto rather than just, another fraud or Ponzi. What's the difference?
For what it's worth, I think the prosecution is trying to make that point that you're bringing up there, that, despite all this like terminology, the complexities of, digital currency marketplaces, at the end of the day, this is a story about a guy who got a lot of people to trust them and then stole their money. But I think the ways that this case will ultimately end up defining crypto is, the thing is, almost everybody seems to be wanting some accountability for Sam Bankman-Fried here. And not only that, if he is, found guilty, and if the FTX bankruptcy and other things continue apace, I mean, FTX was such a core rock of the crypto economy. You really can't talk about crypto from 2020 to 2022 without talking about FTX. It was everywhere in the world, and a lot of places in pop culture too. It decorated the Miami Heat stadium. It appeared on jerseys. This is something that was not just a crypto company, but something that was definitional to crypto. I think it's going to be the first shot, really, that the government takes toward finally instilling some sort of stronger framework around cryptocurrency. Obviously, the SEC has been quite aggressive and making it quite known that it wants to hold wrongdoers to account here and regulate certain digital coins like securities and so on, and subject them to the same rules, because their whole thing is exchanges like FTX maybe should not be allowed. There maybe should not be the system that is so readily open for people to just play with massive amounts of money and then have it be so easily co-opted for other people's purposes.
Well, Tish, I'll let you get back to trial. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.
Nitish Pahwa is an associate business and tech writer here at Slate. And that's it for our show today. What Next TBD is produced by Evan Campbell and Anna Phillips. Our show is edited by Jonathan Fisher. Alicia Montgomery is vice president of audio for Slate. TBD is part of the larger What Next family. TBD is also part of Future Tense, a partnership of Slate, Arizona State University, and New America. If you're a fan of the show, I have a request for you. Become a Slate Plus member. Just head on over to slate.com/whatnextplus to sign up. We'll be back next week with more episodes. I'm Emily Peck, filling in for Lizzie O'Leary, and you can catch me on Slate Money every Saturday. Thanks for listening.